Hello! We're super excited to start the course with you, but as always, before we do, we need to see where we're starting and where we're ending up so we have a clear path to becoming a top designer. So let's see what this course will look like for you. The first step is always meeting the client. This is the first step in any design project, any project you may have. And we're gonna start off with a fictional company that hires you and they wanna create a product that rivals Amazon. In this entire course, we're gonna build this product from start to finish and give for you an exact step-by-step process that you can use for all your future projects. This is a process that Daniel, who has worked as a lead designer for multiple companies, uses all the time. Now, this section also introduces you to some of the tools we're going to use in the course, how to get the best out of the course, but we're also not going to spend too much time because I know you want to get started and start designing. We're going to revisit this idea of meeting a client later on towards the end of the course so that you can learn about things like user stories, using Trello, using story mapping in Figma. But we want us to get started. So right away, we're gonna start designing this product that this fictional company, Keiko Corp, wants to build. We're gonna learn about sketching, about inspiration, about user flows and sitemaps. This is the first stage where we try to draw inspiration from different sources and start to brainstorm ideas for the product we're gonna build. This is a very critical process and we're gonna take you step by step. Then we get into even more exciting things. This is the explore and iterate phase. This is where we talk about wireframes, prototyping, and getting feedback. We're going to start using Figma, which is a wonderful tool that more and more people are using now. Because things like Photoshop are kind of outdated when it comes to design and most people don't use it. We want to use a modern tool like Figma that you're going to see allows us to do everything we want. And also makes our handoff later on when we finish the project super easy. You're gonna love Figma. And the next step is the really fun part. It's the visual design. This is where we talk about design theory, accessibility, things like typography, grid and spacing, forms and UI elements, color theory, image and iconography. And obviously, as I mentioned, accessibility, which is becoming more and more important. And it's a must for all designers moving forward. This is what most of you associate design with. This idea of making things beautiful, adding color, deciding what looks good. But as you can see, there's lots of steps before we get to this visual design because you need to have a plan before you start just making things pretty. Now, this section is going to be very big, and we're going to learn a lot of interesting best practices and also step-by-step guide for you to implement these things in all your designs. Now that our product is starting to take shape, we then get into design exploration. This is where we talk about design patterns, mobile design, applying visual design and motion, and also micro interactions. This is where we make everything look really modern. Again, talk about best practices, about the importance of motion and animations, how we can make the user interact with our product in a way that is exciting to them, that creates good user experience. Lots to cover in this section. We then get to putting it all together. Everything we've built up until this point allows us to get to this point, which is building a design system and the final composition. Putting everything together to create the final high fidelity design assets that you can present to your client. Trust me, getting to this point is totally worth it. By the end of it all, you're gonna have tons of assets and design templates that you can use on all your future projects. And best of all, the product that we're gonna build together, you can now put on your portfolio. So that next time you're on some freelancing website or you're applying for a contract, well, they're gonna see this and they're gonna be impressed by your work. But not only that, you now have the step-by-step process that you can use for all your future projects to make sure that you follow the best practices. This is where we go back to the idea of meeting the client. We want to revisit this and make sure that we understand what happens when we get our clients or we are looking for clients. What are the best practices? What are the questions that we ask to try to understand what their needs are, because at the end of the day, design is all about understanding what the client and the user needs and creating a product around that need and want. Finally, to complete the course, we are going to talk about this idea of creating a web portfolio for you to be discovered by others, for you to get clients, and who knows, maybe even work remotely. We want to show you some of the best practices when it comes to showcasing your work. And then finally, just as a bonus bit, because we're going to be talking about how to hand off your work to developers. Once we're done with the design process, we usually hand off our work to developers that can program and perhaps put the website online or the mobile app in the app stores. Now, HTML and CSS is not necessary for you to be a top designer, but it doesn't hurt to know how websites are built, how to put a website online, and learn how you might become a full-fledged designer that can use HTML and CSS to wow the clients. So as you can see, we have a lot to cover, but it's going to be really, really fun. We're going to build something really, really beautiful that I think you're going to be proud of at the end of it all. We're going to take you from zero to mastery. But here's the thing. The best part of this course is our online private community of over 300,000 students. We have on here people chatting every day, helping each other out, solving problems together, showcasing their work, or just talking about the latest and greatest in the tech industry. This is an optional resource for you to use so that you can have back and forth conversation with other students and myself and Daniel so that you feel like you're part of a classroom. I'm on there chatting every day, and we also have monthly challenges for you to do to supplement the course. But you know what? That's enough talking for me. I know you want to get started, so let's learn how to design beautiful products. Guess what? You have just found your first client. And this guy, his name is Bruno. He has a huge idea. They're going to create a new product to take on Amazon. You see, shopping on Amazon isn't the best. I mean, sure, you can find lots of stuff, but the whole experience design, there's room for improvement. And Bruno, that works at Keiko Corp, one of the fastest growing tech companies in the world, well, he wants to take on Amazon and build their own shopping experience. And they found you as a designer to lead the charge, to design their product, their mobile and web presence to take on Amazon. Now, this is the first part of any design project that you may have. It's this idea of meeting the client. You meet someone that needs your expertise, but you're taking this course because you're starting from scratch or you already have some knowledge and you want to improve upon it. Now, because everyone has different skill levels with this course, we're going to assume you have already met the client and you're starting to work right away, just like we have with Bruno. At the end of the course, we have some extra bits for you to show you how you may find and get your first clients, but we also want to start with the actual practical designer things to get started on the course because I know you're getting excited to learn. So the first step that we're going to take is to learn the skills and have that dream portfolio by the end of this course. So we're going to start designing the product that Bruno wants and eventually have a finished design system and portfolio so that when we come back to this idea of meeting a client, you already have the portfolio and the skill set needed to start looking for your first clients, whether it's on a freelance website or just an existing client. Hooray! But here's a quick thing to get you started when meeting a client. The whole thing is about solving their problems. When you meet a client, can you solve their problems? Are you the person that can take what they say and wow them? Are you the expert that they have been looking for all along? You see, people want somebody that makes their life easier, not harder. By the way, you might be wondering something. Why are we saying product designer here? Isn't this a web and mobile designer course? Well, yeah, it is. But the idea of design and designing, as we're going to find out throughout the course, isn't necessarily just about the web or just about mobile. Our technology is constantly evolving. There's new platforms coming out all the time. And a designer should be flexible. Sure, we can just learn web development, but then what happens if we want to build a mobile app or a VR app or any sort of product that can be on any platform? So we want to describe this course as a product designer because you can design on any platform for any product. So although we might use web design, mobile design, product design as a term, in the end, we want to build the skill set so that you can design for any platform that are out there right now and also future platforms. So our job as designers is to understand the need of the client and create designs that they themselves aren't able to do. Now, Bruno wants to build this massive shopping experience online that can take on Amazon. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's dive in and let's start exploring the world of design, the processes, and how we might go about designing a beautiful product. Welcome back. Now, this course has two paths for you to take, depending on your situation. So what are these two paths? Well, one is to just follow along. We're going to show you step by step how to go from start to finish, from sketching to having ideas to final full-fledged interactions, animations, and final designs for the product. If you want, you can follow along, customize however you want so that by the end, you have an entire design system that you can use on future projects, as well as a product that you can put on your portfolio and wow your employers. The other path that you can take with this course is that you already have a client or you have a product that you want to create. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. The way this course is structured is that we show you the exact steps a designer would take from the very beginning to the end. So by following along the step, you can actually implement your own design systems, your own designs, your own product if you already have something. We wanted to create this course so that in the future, when you get different clients, you can keep coming back to these sections and follow the steps all along so that you have a professional, full-fledged system that takes you from zero all the way to mastery, to wowing your clients. So decide on these two paths, whether you want to just follow along and customize the product that we're going to build, or you already have something that you wanted to work on and follow along the steps and create your own product. I'm excited to see what you end up with at the end of the course. Let's get started. Let's do a really quick exercise just to get our hands dirty and get us excited about the course. What we're going to do is build our first logo. Now we have a whole section where we're going to create logos from scratch ourselves and learn what the best practices are. But just for now, I want us to have something created right away. And what we're going to do is create our logo for the product that we want to build. So in our case, if we want to build a shopping experience that beats Amazon, well, then let's create that. If you have a logo that you want to do on your own for a different product, let's do that as well. And what we're going to use is some online logo makers. Again, this is just the first step. Don't worry, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty later. But for now, I'm going to link to some resources after this video. But as you can see here, on zerotomastery.io, we have a resources page. And at the very top, we have some free logo makers that we can use. So there's 4 options here. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. I want you to click on one of these and create your own custom logo. Now, after this lecture, we're also going to include a bunch of design resources that we're going to use throughout the course, just so you always have a reference and you can always get inspired as we're creating our product. Let's talk about the differences between a designer and a developer. Now, you may know this already, but if you're just starting out, these terms are often confusing, and most people can't decide whether they want to be a designer or a developer. So let's have a look at these two fields and see what their differences are and also where they overlap, because there is a lot of crossover. But the main difference is that a designer is focused on the aesthetics, the experience of the user, versus a developer is focused more on the internals and the things that make a product work. But let's get a little bit deeper into that. You see, the first phase of building any product is the planning phase. This planning phase is probably the most important. This is where we decide and map the entire project. How should the product look? How should it feel? What should it do? This is also the part where you're usually interacting with the client and deciding what their goals are, what the user's goals are, and planning out the project so that you have defined goals that you want to achieve with your product. From the planning phase, we go into the design phase. And the design phase is all about using all the information in the planning phase and making it into reality. Usually you'd create something like site structure or mobile structure. You'll have visual representation. How will the product look? What would the users see? By the end of the design phase, you usually know what the product should look like, what the product should do. From there, we get into the development phase. The development phase is where we do the programming work. We usually take all the assets and information that we've gathered from the previous stage, that is the design phase, and we try to implement it on a live website or a live mobile app. You might use things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to make the designs come alive so that they're online. They're on your phone. Once you've built the product, you've developed the product, then we get into the exciting phase of the launch phase. This is where we deliver our product to the users, to the public. Usually there's some polishing that we need to do, maybe some design tweaks, maybe some testing of our site to make sure that it works properly. But this is the critical part. Once we launch our product, it doesn't end there. The next step is the post-launch. This is usually where we hand off the product to a client, but we also monitor how the launch goes. How do the users use the product? Are there any issues? Because most of the time when you create something, it's not 100% right from the beginning. So instead, you learn from your first version that you launched, and then you iterate. That is, you improve upon it. You maybe do user testing and understand why users aren't clicking on this button, or maybe users are confused how your product works. And this turns into a loop, because from the insights that you get after the launch, you can now start improving your product. You can start planning again, designing again, developing again, and launching again so that you get better and better insights. You improve the product over and over. And this whole process continues. You can never really finish a product because a product can always be improved. But we're talking about designers and developers here. So where do they come in? Well, a simplified version of this is that a designer is in charge of this part. They're heavily involved with the planning phase of working with the client and deciding what the goals are. What do we want the users to do? They're obviously heavily involved in the designs. They need to design the product so it looks nice, it looks friendly, it looks usable. It meets the client and user expectations. But they're also involved in doing things like user testing, learning from the users and improving their designs from what they learn. The developers are mainly focused with this part. They are usually the ones that receive the designs and start using things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to implement those designs into an actual working website or a mobile app. They also might help with the launch by putting the code that they've created on a server, monitoring and launching the product. But they're also going to encounter bugs in their code. Maybe they've programmed something that isn't efficient or is incorrect and it creates bugs. Well, they have to fix those as well. So they're also involved in the post-launch process. So remember what I said at the beginning. Design is all about these aesthetics. You don't necessarily need to code because you're involved more at the beginning stages and later stages of the product development phase. But it doesn't hurt to know how developers use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create websites, which is why we've included those sections later on in the course, so that you also understand how you might want to do this yourself. But as a developer, you also might want to learn how to design, how to plan things, because then you're able to understand the whole product better. So these borders, although might look rigid right now, can overflow into each other. But if you wanted just a guideline, this is it. To be a great designer, you need to focus on these three things. Sure, HTML and CSS and some programming will help you. We've added a couple of extra videos in there for you to still see the whole picture. All right, this video is getting long, so let's take a break and I'll see you in the next one. So designing websites and apps. Sounds pretty easy, right? Everybody can do it. Well, not really. Because when you first think about design, most people don't consider all the things that go into designing a beautiful product. Because when we talk about design, there's actually 4 key elements to designing, and specifically for web and mobile designers. The first part is graphic design. This is the idea of using colors, color theory, layout, typography, sketching, using fonts, imagery. It's the idea of telling a story to convey a specific feeling or to target a specific audience. Graphic design is all about the visuals, but just knowing graphic design isn't enough. The next part is this idea of user experience or UX. Because to be a good web and mobile designer, you need to study user experience and user interface design. So what is that? It's the art and science of designing products that provide users with the best possible experience. How can you make a user move through your product in an enjoyable way, in an easy flow? It's all about understanding your customer. Again, don't worry, because we're going to dive deep into these topics throughout the course. The next part is conversion focused or goal conversion. As a designer, you need to know how to design a product that drives the results that your clients want. For example, Bruno hired you because he wants to be successful with his product. So you need to design something that increases this conversions. Conversions meaning that a user takes a desired action. So your job is to motivate the visitors of your mobile app or a web app to take that desired action. Maybe sign up for a mailing list or buy a product. And there's a science to goal conversion. And then finally, we've talked about this, but it's this idea of platform development, whether it's on mobile or web. Although some designers limit their work and don't focus on web development or mobile app development, having at least a basic knowledge of how the platform you're designing for works, for example, HTML and CSS on the web, can be a really important skill and a really boosting skill to be a top designer, which is why we've included it in this course. Now, these are the 4 main things that you need to learn and we're going to learn to be a top designer. Throughout all of these, and something that we keep mentioning is this idea that you'll also need to be good at client and project management, but we'll get to that later in the course. Now, throughout the course, we're going to use all modern tools that top designers are using right now, but we're also going to link to some resources that you can use to help along your journey. Now, we've already checked out the zerotomastery.io resources page where we have a bunch of resources that you can use. But here are some of my favorite ones that I recommend you check out. The first one is goodui.org. And this is great for that goal conversion that I was talking about. It actually tells you how you can improve your conversion on your designs by showing you A/B tests. So for example, Amazon discovers that showing structured product detail is better. So it actually shows you which design or which layout is better. So they have a ton of these that they constantly post, so you can learn about good patterns, good UI practices that you can use for your website. The next one is awards.com. And this is great to get design inspirations. And you can even search for inspirations like different colors or different topics and get ideas for designs that you may want to use. Another one for inspiration is this one right here. And this again shows off other people's portfolio, but can also be used as your inspiration. Now, if you ever want to use icons in your products, well, I personally like using flat icon. But if you're looking for a free version, there's also things like the Noun project that give you beautiful icons that you can use. If you want images for your product, something like unsplash.com is also great to use. Now, this is just scratching the surface. There's a ton of resources that you can use. But the key is to remember, we have a lot of resources online as designers to develop our ideas. So don't get too intimidated. You don't always have to start from scratch. So as a designer, you can expect three things or three types of work environments. One is a freelancer. You're your own boss. You have your own clients. It involves a little bit more management on your time, but again, you're your own boss. Another scenario might be you're working at an agency. An agency is a company that has a bunch of designers and developers, and they look for clients for you. And those clients talk through the agency so that you don't have to go looking for clients. And the agency just assigns you different projects, which is a great way for you to gain experience working on different types of projects. And then finally, the last type of work you'll see is working what we call in-house. Working for an actual company, working for a product, and you're the designer or a lead designer for a specific company. As you can see, the world of a designer is vast. There's lots to learn, but there's also lots of opportunities, which is why you're taking this course. So enough jabber. It's time for us to get started. Moving forward, Daniel's going to show you the step-by-step process that we're going to take on this course, but also for all your future projects. Remember, the flow of the course is simple. We start with a client, and then we end with a portfolio for you to use on future projects, plus the system in place for you to use moving forward for all future projects. All right, let's get started.